Hello everybody, I'm the Spirit Man, the embracer of human good and analyst of fiction, and welcome to the second of my Spirit vlogs. I've been meaning to make more of these. I actually saw a few movies weeks ago, but I never bothered making Spirit vlogs for them, so I'll get to making a special set of what I remember videos for those movies soon, because it's already been weeks and I only remember those movies so much, but maybe so well. But anyway, so just the other day, the two most recent movies I saw were Dumbo and Shazam. And I'm going to cover Dumbo here and Shazam in the next video. And also look forward to our next Marvel-thon vlogs later this week. We're going to be covering the entire Phase 2 saga with the exception of Ant-Man, because as far as Bizarre Critic and I are concerned, Ant-Man does not count as part of Phase 2, or let alone the end of Phase 2. But anyway, I've dragged on enough, so Dumbo of 2019 by Tim Burton, because Tim Burton did such a great job with the 2010 Alice in Wonderland film, Disney felt, what the hell, let's make him the director of our live-action adaptation of a very underrated 40s cartoon film made back in Disney's golden age. I haven't seen Dumbo all the way through the original in a long time, but just the idea of it coming back in this fashion just really sparked my interest, and I'm going to be watching the original Dumbo again later to refresh myself on everything that I forgot from my childhood, because this was one of those movies I watched all the time, but I barely remembered any of as the years went by, especially as this remake was coming up. Beforehand I just watched a few scenes on YouTube to refresh my memory a bit, to get in touch with what was so popular, what was so talked about in regards to the original film. And then I went to see this movie. I actually came in a couple minutes late, like just after the previews ended, but I didn't miss too much. It was just basically setting up our main characters and so forth. So yeah, this movie begins with a circus where a couple of kids who are clearly the main characters, since we do not, as far as I know, we don't see the mother elephant, Mrs. Jumbo, at all until some minutes later. And we see them helping set up the circus, and they're waiting for their father to come back from World War I. He comes back, he's played by Colin Farrell, I believe, and he lost his arm, he lost his left arm, and yeah, it's a sad, tragic moment for these kids to see their dad after so long, just to see him a bit crippled from war times and all. And they apparently lost their mother to the influenza, like a Spanish virus or something that was going around at that time in whatever area they were in. I think they're in America, but I'm not sure. We're shown right away that the girl, Mary, I think, is really into science and is all about the scientific method and making scientific discoveries and yada yada, and the boy is pretty much just there to be the boy. He doesn't really have much of a personality apart from cheerfulness and stuff, but compared to his sister, he had a much more enjoyable personality, or a performance, to say the least. I mean, I'm gonna say it right now, the girl, I'm sorry, but the girl who played Mary was just really stale, really bad, to put it bluntly. Every line, every moment you have with her, every line she says is clearly scripted, like she just learned it, or she just practiced it, and she really thinks that she's conveying genuine emotion with every line she reads. I'm going to make scientific discovery. I'm going to be brilliant. I'm going to do this. We're all family here, no matter how small. I mean, and she was clearly meant to be the much more significant protagonist as compared to her brother, because she practically takes center stage almost the entire freaking film. And the head circus guy is played by Danny DeVito, literally called Maximilian Medici. Yes, they named this character after one of the most corrupt families in Italian history, in Renaissance history, let alone history itself. And Maximilian of all names, real subtle, real original, Burton. But hey, he at least gets to sing a bit of the famous train song from the original movie. We don't actually hear the whole song being played or anything because that'd be too much like the original. He explains that even though the father, Holt, I think, yeah, Holt, even though Holt is a popular horse rider, Medici had, or Max, I'll just call him Max. Max had to force himself to sell the horses to make up for lost money, and he needs Holt and his children to look after the elephants, especially Mrs. Jumbo, who we see is pregnant and is gonna have a baby any day now. And they're gonna exploit the baby elephants for more riches or for more money, basically to make up for all the lost money that's putting the circus at risk of being bankrupt and putting a bunch of good people, a bunch of talented performers out of business, out of a job, out of work, out of homeless, to say the least. So we literally have like a 15-second moment where the storks come in, but they don't deliver babies, of course. It's just supposed to be symbolic or whatever. And I do like the idea of that, but I mean, it was literally only a 15-second moment. They couldn't have extended it to at least a minute or two to really convey to us the magic of a child being delivered, a child animal being delivered, and so forth. I mean, and then again, I would have preferred if they had stuck with the original movies, a classic concept of storks bringing babies. I don't know much about that myth, or whether it originated from Dumbo, the original Dumbo movie, or not. But anyway, so then Mrs. Jumbo delivers her baby, who is hiding in the hay the very next day. What a rhyme there. Mrs. Jumbo is forced out of her train cart by this real asshole taskmaster who hates Holt. They have some past rivalry, but it's never really explained or alluded to very well, to be honest. So everyone, in a dramatic fashion, everyone sees the baby elephant, but of course the baby elephant has long ears, and this horrifies Max because he thinks it's going to be a laughing stock, and nobody's going to want to see it. But he's still determined to exploit the baby anyway, as long as they hide his ears. And they have a show. The children briefly are able to make the baby elephant fly, but of course nobody believes them. But at least they give the baby elephant some mice to play with, because they don't want to use the circus mouse, the Timothy mouse, or whatever he was called in the original movie. They're just doing a wink wink to you, like, hey, remember that mouse best friend that Dumbo had in the original cartoon? We are not having him here. Nope. And we have this show where they show the baby Jumbo for the first time in a stroller with a sign overhead that said, "Dear baby Jumbo." But when the baby sees feathers in the audience, because it was a feather that made him fly to begin with, because he took the feather into his nose and flew briefly, and he really likes feathers to begin with, so that's a cute thing. He takes the feathers he takes the feathers and the wig off of this random lady, accidentally exposes his giant ears to everyone, who of course laugh at him like a bunch of assholes, though some of their laughs were a bit scripted, to say the least. And the sign above the baby's carriage is messed around, and it literally says, "Ear baby Dumbo," because it gets messed up that way. And so the baby infamously becomes Dumbo. And the mother who realizes that her baby's in danger, she busts out of her tent and attacks the nearest people, including the Taskmaster, who has his last hurrah when he is incidentally killed by a falling pillar when the entire tent comes down. And because Mrs. Jumbo is indirectly responsible for his death, she's taken away, sold, I think, and Dumbo was separated from his mother. So now the kids, everyone calls him Dumbo because the audience calls him Dumbo in the circus, and because the kids realize if we call him Baby Jumbo Jr., he'll think too much of his mom. But we gotta help him fly so he can make a spectacle. He can raise enough money to see his mom again. So the kids realize that the feather is the key to making Dumbo fly, and at the right opportune moment in the next show, which is supposed to, if I recall, it pretty much mirrors the climax of the original cartoon film, which was this giant fake house on fire, where as far as the show was concerned, all he had to do was take some water, put the fires out, and then come back down with clown makeup on and everything. But some things go wrong. Dumbo gets trapped on top of the fake house, and then Mary comes up the ladder and gives him a feather to help him focus on flying. She falls into the water below, safe and sound, and Dumbo flies, and everybody's amazed, and Max is extra happy that he has a glorious spectacle to exploit out of this baby large-ear elephant. And I assume for the next several weeks or so, he becomes the most popular, most talked about circus attraction across the country or whatever. We don't see much of it. It literally, the time goes by like that. We see like a newspaper or two, then we see the bad guy saying, "We have business with an elephant." And then we see that the next Dumbo show is sold out. When I was seeing this in the theater, I was like, really? Don't you think you're rushing this a bit? But that's one of the major problems with this movie in general, with a bunch of movies, or just the remakes, the live-action Disney remakes in general that I've noticed, is that they tend to rush a lot of things they should not, because they believe in that whole old-fashioned bullshit concept of you have to keep your movie as short as possible, as short as necessary, in order to keep people's attention spans in check. But I don't believe that you have to be as long as necessary. Obviously not too long. I'd probably go no more than twice or even 1.5 times as long as certain scenes and moments were played out in this movie. But anyway, so then we get to meet the big bad guy played by Michael Keaton with his girlfriend, what was her name, Chloe or something, played by Eva Green, who is French. And Eva Green herself is an English actress, but she plays a French woman. And she does a pretty good job. I'll get more into her in a sec. And, Michael Keaton, Vanderbilt, that was his name. The character's name was Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt makes an offer to Max that he can't refuse, that they come and work at his little mini metropolis funland theme park called Dreamland, and have Dumbo be the leading attraction. And this will help the entire circus troupe to gain more money and glory than they could have imagined. And it definitely seems that way at first, but of course over time, as you can probably guess, Vanderbilt reveals, "Oh, we decide what we do with the elephants, not you. We decide what to do with the circus troupe, not you." And you need to get with the times. You need to get with the modern day, which was 1919 in this film. And I don't know when the original movie took place. Now that I think about it, that's one of the many reasons why I need to watch it again. But let's see here. With Vanderbilt's whole ultimate evil exploitation plan is supposed to be that he has Dumbo fly his girlfriend Chloe around repeatedly. And, you know, Max of all people says firsthand, Dumbo's never flown with anybody on him before. And Vanderbilt's like, oh, you'll figure it out. And, of course, they do, and much to my own amazement, Chloe quickly became a very likable character. She begins forming a bond with Dumbo, and especially with the kids and their dad. And she reveals, I used to be a street performer, barely making ends meet, until I met Vanderbilt. Yet somehow, the more time I spend with him, the more years I spend with him, the less important I seem, the less important I feel. So, you know, you feel a bit sad for her and all. And then, let's see here, at the first show they have of Dumbo, trying to fly with Chloe on his back. First, they have the pink elephants on parade, which was literally somehow some sort of magician's trick, I assume, some sort of advanced magician's trick. As far as this movie's concerned, we literally see all these giant balloons, pink balloons, taking the shape of pink elephants and dancing around with a loose recreation of the famous Pink Elephants on Parade song from the original movie. There is no singing whatsoever, and you can barely even recognize it the harder you listen to it. Max, Danny DeVito's character of all people, literally says for a brief moment, "Pink elephants!" And that's it. He doesn't even say Pink Elephants on Parade. And, like, I was seeing this, I'm like, God damn it. Like, of all the things they had to leave out, they really had to leave out the classic Pink Elephants on Parade song. It gets even more insulting when they completely leave out a classic song that I instantly fell in love with again, which was When I See an Elephant Fly. That is nowhere in this movie. All they do is very briefly alluded to it a couple times, where I have the introducer to Dumbo saying, "You've seen a horse fly, you've seen a house fly, you've seen an airplane fly, but you ain't seen..." Okay, maybe not an airplane. "But you haven't seen everything until you see an elephant fly." And I'm like, for God's sake, why can't you sing? God damn it. I completely skipped over this earlier. I didn't mean to, but when Jumbo, before Mrs. Jumbo is sold off, there is a touching moment where one of the female circus performers is playing a soft guitar with another instrumentalist or two, and she is singing the famous "Baby Mine" song from the original movie, which was touching. It was touching, though it was nowhere as effective as in the original movie. That was one of the scenes I have watched numerous times before I saw this remake, and I especially didn't like that they didn't show all the animal mothers and their offspring in that movie as they did compared to this movie. I was upset they did not have that at all. And as good as the scene was, it was nowhere as impactful as the classic scene was in the old days. And now, back to when Dumbo and Chloe are about to fly, they realize to their horror that there's no safety nets. There's no safety nets whatsoever. And Holt is trying to get Chloe's attention, trying to tell everyone, "Chloe, don't!" I'm probably getting the name wrong, but I can't remember for the life of me what it was right now, and I just saw this movie. "Chloe, come down, or don't do anything, let's get the nets out." But Chloe is determined to see this through, and it almost works, but Dumbo screws up, she almost falls to her death, but they barely make it. And then this guy that is supposed to be funding Vanderbilt's large theme park. He gets really upset because even though Dumbo does fly on his own briefly, he also just leaves the tent because he hears an elephant and thinks it's his mother's call. It's his mother calling him, which amazingly it is. This elephant, this other large elephant, and all this dark clown makeup and other things on an attraction literally called Nightmare Island, where you see all these encaged animals and dark makeup and stuff, which was bizarre to say the least. This elephant in particular was Mrs. Jumbo, much to everyone's amazement, including the kids and so forth. At this point, I feel like the kids were much less focused on in comparison to the adults and to Dumbo himself, even though Dumbo is the title character and all. But Dumbo was briefly reunited with his mother, but then is separated from him because Vanderbilt is corporate and evil, ha ha ha. Even though there isn't really much to the depth of his corporate evil character, to say the least. Vanderbilt now is desperate to have Dumbo completely focused on his routine so that Vanderbilt can make millions with this investor guy, this bank investor. And he's ordering to have the mother, to have Mrs. Jumbo killed the following day before the show. And so the entire circus troupe has come together to say we can't stand this. Especially since Vanderbilt has now fired us. He's fired Max and the entire circus troupe because he doesn't have any need for them anymore. And they've barely been there for an amount of days. Not to mention the family that was caring for Dumbo had literally lived in this mini palace. So now now there's this big plan to save Mrs. Jumbo and set Dumbo free after the show. I gotta say that this whole build up to this climax, and the climax itself, is one of the most bizarre things I've ever seen. And I suppose since this is a Tim Burton film, this shouldn't really come as a surprise to anybody how this all came together. So in the climax of this movie, all the circus performers come together to distract as many police guards as possible across the theme park. And while there's some clever ideas with it, including them pretending to be the trapped animals on the loose, it's just really strange how easy it is. And they literally lure in small groups of guards at a time, 2 by 2 or 3 by 3, whatever. I think that a lot of them get trapped in the nightmare island of all things. But bottom line, they set Mrs. Jumbo free, and then Dumbo does his thing with Chloe, and this time it works. They fly around for a bit while Holt is sneaking on top of the giant tent of the Coliseum tent. That's what it's called, a Coliseum tent, of all things. If Vanderbilt thought circuses were so out of date, why did he have a giant circus tent to begin with? And why does it look no different? I think it didn't look any different from the regular tent, the tent of the regular circus they had earlier. But whatever. Max, realizing that everybody is freeing Mrs. Jumbo and Dumbo, he finds the right moment to help, where just when Holt is about to be caught by these police guards, Max goes up to them and says, "Hey, I'm one of the people in charge, and that guy's just doing his job on top of that tent." And the guards don't question it; they just say, "Go right ahead." And Holt goes up and rips this giant hole through the top of the tent, and Dumbo and Chloe go through and get free, which they totally could have just done by going out through the front, just like Dumbo did before, especially considering that all the police guards supposedly have been distracted and have been lured away, and everybody's in freak-out mode. But whatever, Dumbo and Chloe go to the power tower, of all things, in the theme park, and they mess around with the power, and they open up the gates, and which allows Mrs. Jumbo and the circus troupe gang to escape. But when Vanderbilt gets desperate to try to keep Dumbo trapped, he accidentally sets his own theme park on fire. Great job there, asshole. And the kids are being chased around by the evil British partners of Vanderbilt. And they only barely manage to escape with Dumbo's help, who is briefly reunited with his mother again, but then has to go back and help them. They all escape, and Vanderbilt now looks like a complete moron, because everybody now knows he lit his own theme park on fire and is going to get in big shit for it. And the bank investor doesn't really care. He literally turns to Max and say, "So, Mr. Medici, you want to get some hot dogs? Sure. The hot dogs are on me," or something. I'm like, hot dogs? Where did hot dogs come from? Whatever. So in a touching ending where you think, it's a total E.T. moment where you think maybe Dumbo's going to stay with everybody, maybe he isn't, but he totally goes with his mom on this sea boat that's taking animals to the jungle. Dumbo sadly says goodbye to everybody, but goes with his mama because he loves his mama more than anything, even though we don't see nearly enough time of them bonding and developing a parental bond and stuff in comparison to the cartoon, as far as I'm concerned. And the cartoon had all this stuff about being ostracized by all the other elephants who talked. Dumbo and Mrs. Jumbo were the only animals pretty much through the entire film that didn't talk. Also, I thought we were going to have a cameo from Black Crows. I mean, I know the Black Crows in the original movie had a lot of controversy, to say the least. Or at least for this movie in particular, and not as controversial as other things in other movies, but that's a whole other story. So in the final few minutes of the movie, we see that the circus troupe is living very happily on their own, completely independent, and being successful with their own extent of talents and so forth. And we see the family, we see the Holtz family one last time, now I remember, Mary had a sort of science show to do, and I think her brother was her assistant. I'm not sure. They're happy now, but they're also looking off and wondering how Dumbo is doing, and then we see a brief couple minutes scene where Dumbo and Mrs. Jumbo are in the wild with elephants, which is very ironic in comparison to the cartoon, because in the cartoon, it was just Dumbo had finally mastered the ability of flight, became a massive success, and was finally reunited with his mother. And the movie just ended with them going off into a happy celebrity-like life, while the Black Crows sang a reprise of "When I See an Elephant Fly." I was actually trying to sing that as I was singing Dumbo fly one last time around the elephants and going back to his mother. They hug, they look out beyond, and the movie ends. So, that was the Dumbo 2019 remake. It was very good. I'll say right now, I want to give this a low B, but I'll just give this a low B, because there's a lot to like about this film more than it is to dislike. I mean, it would have been best if they had just stuck to making a genuine recreation of the cartoon film that a lot of people still love to this day, though they don't necessarily love as much as other Disney classics like Sleeping Beauty and so forth, and I fucking hate that film, I'm saying right now. But Dumbo's just one of those movies one of those underrated classics, to my understanding, that just never really gets talked about anymore decades later. So Disney pretty much, compared to the other Disney remakes, Disney pretty much had a perfect excuse to bring Dumbo back. But why they didn't just do a genuine recreation of that movie, I don't really get. But for what they did, making something very unique, very distinctive in comparison, they did a pretty good job. I really wish we had much stronger character development and depth and so forth for the human characters, especially the kids, because they tried. Tim Burton clearly tried desperately to make them the central focus, and they definitely seemed to be that at first during the first act or so of the movie, during the first 30 to 45 minutes, but then they clearly were not as important as as Max was, or the Troop were, or Vanderbilt was, or Dumbo was, to say the least. I think the French girl, Chloe, again, probably not remember the name right, she was probably the best part of the movie for me, because I really liked how she started out as this shallow performer for Vanderbilt, who didn't really give a shit about anybody but herself, and as she bonded with the family and with Dumbo, she deeply cared for them and the circus troupe, in respectively, and became a much more confident, self-confident, proud person. I'm not sure how much else there is to go on. I mean, I guess, I wish they had spent more time with other things, with other concepts and scenes that they were trying to execute. They were trying to execute well, but not well enough, in my opinion. I wish they had played the whole. I wish they had performed the whole Baby Mine scene, let alone Pink Elephants on Parade and When I See an Elephant Fly. It would have been a lot better if they incorporated that somehow, but you have what you have. And last but certainly not least, I'd have to say that Dumbo himself could have been a much more interesting character as far as this movie's concerned. I mean, obviously in the original film, he clearly is the central focus, and he's supposed to be trying to be reunited with his mother, which he's not until the very end, after a certain point. You definitely need to watch that movie again. But what they did here was still pretty good, was still pretty enjoyable, and I still found Dumbo very entertaining and a very touching character, young child elephant character, to say the least. I really like this movie, and I wish it could have been a lot better, but who knows? It may get a bit more appreciation over time. As far as I know now, people are really mixed about it, but nothing too hateful, nothing too drastic, at least not yet. We'll see how this goes in the coming weeks. It's already been a couple weeks now, a week or two, since this movie's release, and there's been no big appraisal or anything about it yet. And to end this vlog off, let me just say I'm not one of those live-action remake haters who says, oh, they shouldn't do this to Beauty and the Beast, or to Cinderella, to Jungle Book, and so forth. I mean, you have to realize half of these movies, especially Dumbo, are literally decades old. If they're not going to make the remakes now, it's probably going to be more awkward or more stressful in the future. But anyway, I'm looking forward to more live-action Disney remakes in the future. I definitely enjoyed this movie. Definitely go see it at least once or even twice if you want to. If you want to enjoy all the good stuff again, and there's plenty of good stuff. But that's my Spirit vlog for the new Dumbo remake, and I'll see you in the next video when we talk about the now famously lightning appraised Shazam. Kind of a lame way to end the vlog here, but you live and learn. And that's also kind of lame to say too, but we're still kind of new at this whole vlog thing, myself, the Bizarre Critic, and the rest. And we're enjoying every minute of it. Happy Dumbo 2019 remake, everybody. See you in the next vid. Goodbye.